All right, AI agent that boosts your conversion rate, your AOV, your contribution margin, and more importantly, your profit volume, all without code or spending more on ads. This is really about making the most of the traffic that you're already getting. So the plan, what we'll do is cover the impact of this agent on your business. And we're going to look at it from two perspectives. The first one is going to be where it sits in your marketing system. And the second one is going to be how it impacts your financials from both a marketing KPI perspective and also a simplified accounting perspective that backs down to profit. Then after that, we will do a demo of the input and output of the agent and what it's like to work with it on a day-to-day basis and what that usage looks like. And lastly, we will do a build walkthrough of the agent workflow that you're seeing here. So you can see the architecture, the nuances when it comes to the prompts, and then replicate it for yourself to make it more contextual to the tools that you use. So let's begin with talking about where this agent fits inside of your marketing system and the role that it plays. And I want to talk about it from the perspective of an experience that my wife shared with me. So years ago, she worked at a shoe store back in high school. And there's two broad categories of people who work there. There's the person over here who only takes sales/orders and basically doesn't really do too much proactive selling of trying to get and help customers to buy. On the other hand, there's another type of person and they take things in a different direction. This person greets customers. This person empathizes with customers. This person makes customers feel understood. And as a result of all these things, customers spend more. And this distinction reminds me of the role that different types of pages on your website serve. So this one, I'd say, is analogous to your product description pages, which is more commonly known for short form as your PDPs. And on the other hand, this one, who's a little bit more proactive, these ones are called landing pages or your LPs. And the contrast in their roles is that PDPs, I see them as somewhat a little bit more passive in the process of persuading and convincing and nurturing people to buy. Whereas on the other hand, landing pages are a little more proactive. They sort of do this role up here online through the written word, pictures, and videos. So let's shift a little bit from the abstract of the analogy over to what it actually looks like on your website and your funnel. So there's three different situations mapped out here. The first one is one that I think we're all familiar with, which is when you have an ad, you may be sending traffic to a product page, so a product description page, or a collection. And then eventually people make it to checkout. And for the sake of example, they may convert at something like 2% over here. On the other hand, there's another flow to consider beyond just the standard go into a product page or collection page. And that is, in between that, we send them to a landing page and then they go to a PDP, there we go, or collection, and then they go through the checkout process. And the aim of doing that is to increase this number so that we can maybe get one more person to buy. So instead of converting at 2%, we convert at 3%. And in a little bit, we'll talk about the importance and the impact that one more purchase can make of every 100. And the third scenario is that we send them from an ad over to a landing page and we go straight to checkout, which is historically where I spent most of my time, going from a traffic source, whether it's an ad or affiliates or anything else, sending to landing pages that are longer form and then driving to checkout, yielding meaningfully higher conversion rates. But along with that, higher AOV, higher profit per session, and ideally higher profit volume. And to get down to another level of more boots on the ground, less abstraction, let's take a look at some examples that are currently running right now. So we have two brands here that I've been following for the last 2 years or so. The first one is Hollow Alpaca Socks. They are on a run rate, I believe, of 50 million this year. And the second, we have Jones Road Beauty, who's doing over 100 million a year. And if we look at where they are sending traffic to, you can see here with Hollow, landing pages that they're sending to. And in this context, I'm using the Motion app to find this data. Landing pages doesn't refer to the landing page that I'm talking about. It refers to any page that they're sending traffic to. But the nuance is they actually are sending to landing pages instead of product pages. So we can see here, this one. This one up top, 46% of the pages they're sending to is going to this URL. So this landing page, which is right over here, which we'll talk about a little bit. And then on the other side of that, we have Jones Road, where the top page that they're sending to, again, the top three, they're all landing pages as opposed to product pages. And the top one is representing 28% of the URLs that they're sending to on their ads. And for clarity, just jumping back to Hollow over here, clarity, I have both showing. So I have, make this a little smaller. This is the landing page that the ads are going to. And then this is the next page that people go to when they click on the call to action. Similarly for Jones Road, similar thing, where here is the landing page to the left, and to the right, we have the PDP that they're sending to. So if you're not running landing pages right now, you'll be in good company if you start doing it. And I think the important nuance to mention here, just jumping back to this over here, is that it's not really an either or situation. You don't necessarily have to only send traffic to landing pages. You can continue to do both. And I'd encourage you to test both, because as a tactic, landing pages can work. However, it's all in the execution. So unit, when it comes to where it fits in your funnel, is a piece that can work, but how you go about executing will make or break the impact. And on the topic of impact, it's a good time to bring up this table here, which we can fill out, to talk about the marketing KPI and financial impact that it can make. And then secondarily, we can talk about it from an accounting perspective too. So we'll kick it off with the concept that I like to call just one more. Let's make this a little thicker. Boom. And the idea is to orient ourselves to understand what the impact of incremental gains to a metric such as your conversion rate can make on your financial outcomes. So as an example, and let's use blue as an illustration for the current scenario. Let's say right now you are getting 1,000 visitors per day, 1,000. And we'll put that for all scenarios. And we'll say right now in the current scenario, you've got a conversion rate of 2%, which means that it backs out to 20 orders per day, and a revenue, assuming the AOV of 60 that's at the top, that backs out to $1,200 in daily revenue. And on the 1,000 visitors, we'll say that's $1 per click. Keep things nice and round and simple. So $1,000 in ad spend. Cost of goods, we'll say, is 25%. So pretty good margins, just to be generous here. And so that backs out to $300 on the 1,200 in revenue. And the contribution margin on that, which we calculate by taking your revenue, subtracting your ad spend, subtracting your cost of goods. And in this case, we'll say cost of goods is inclusive of all the expenses that you incur in order to fulfill an additional order. So your transaction fees and your fulfillment fees all of that wrapped up along with the actual cost of goods, which could be more accurately defined as cost of delivery, but cost of goods works here. So this backs out to a contribution margin of minus $100 on the day. And let's say, just so that we can extrapolate impact over a longer time horizon to understand the compounding effect of both our performance and our decisions, if we were to extrapolate it out over 365 days, that would be minus 36,500 over a year. And just as a comment, this can happen unknowingly if you are running a lot of different products and a lot of different campaigns and things are all mixed up and you're looking at numbers in aggregate, right? So in this scenario, we're saying this is maybe business wide, but just keep in mind that this scenario can happen even within larger revenue numbers that are aggregated together, which makes what we're going to talk about next even more impactful. So let's talk about scenario number 2, where we just get one more person to buy thanks to the landing pages that we work on together with the agent. So we'll say 3%, that bumps things up to 30 orders a day. Revenue goes up to 1,800 on the day. Ad spend will keep the same because it's the same 1,000 visitors, costing us $1 per click or visitor. COGS goes up a little bit because we are fulfilling more orders. However, the numbers back out nicely because we are in the positive. And again, extrapolating this out 365 days just to orient ourselves with a longer term frame on this, this backs out to 127,750. So we'll put this in green because we're in the green. And this is great because this means there is margin in order to cover your fixed expenses and taxes and your salary. And of course, profit to be left over in the business. Okay, and just for fun, we have this third scenario here. I'll move over a little bit, where we get even one more person beyond the 3%. So we're going from 2 to 3 people buying out of 100 to now 4 people. And so what does that look like? That turns into 40. This turns into 2,400, again, on the $60 AOV. Cost of ads stays at $1,000 and cost of goods goes up because we're fulfilling more. So this goes up to 600, but contribution margin is up again to $800 on the day. And again, extrapolating that out for the long term thinking, we are at 292 grand in contribution margin. And so because this is good news, why don't we find an orange? Because this is flaming hot and awesome. So I show these numbers and I like this concept because it reminds us very simply of the power of little hinges that can swing really big doors. Hopping back over to the examples of Hollow and Jones Road over here, there is a reason why, I'm assuming, they are going to landing pages as opposed to just product pages. And in my experience, because I come from the direct response world, landing pages, so the longer form stuff that's preceding collection pages and product pages, is second nature to me. But in the brands that I work with, often going straight to the collections or straight to the product pages seems like that's a go-to. So if we just hop back over here for a second and we go back to the 2 different types of staff who work at the shoe store, we have the PDP and we have landing page. It is very worth our time to figure out how we can work the funnel to incorporate landing pages for the sake of driving this number from 2% to 3%. Even though it's only a 1% difference in absolute terms, it's a relative increase of 50%, and it's getting one more person to buy, which I find helpful to orient myself around when I start to feel like the options that we have to choose from on projects we can work on starts to become overwhelming is if I can just center myself back to how do we just get one more person to buy? It helps to simplify a lot of decision making. Next way we can look at the impact on our business of this agent is to look at it from a simplified accounting perspective. And so the way we like to break down our numbers is into these categories of revenue, and then cost of goods comes out of that, ads comes out of that, operational expenses comes out of that, and then what you're left with is your profit. So as an example, just looking at some standard numbers, let's say you're making $100 in revenue. Cost of goods will probably take up something like 25 to 30% of that. Ads will say another 30%. And then operational expenses, if we're doing a good job, 10%. And in this case, we are actually pretty healthy at 30, maybe a little too healthy. But when it comes to the agent and its impact, I really see 3 spots it can support on, given its role where it's sitting and supporting you on the topic of landing pages. So the first place is revenue. And by extension, it's because if you can convert 10%, 20%, 30%, 50% more people, which in the case of going from 2% to 3% conversion rate, that's one more person per 100 people. As a consequence of that, you can generate more revenue. The other place that I see it making an impact is on your ads. And that is if you can convert more people, the efficiency of your ad spend goes up, where this $30 that's being taken out of every $100 that you're making might actually go down to 25, right? Where you're just converting at a higher rate and your acquisition costs improve. So that could actually go back to your profit. And the third place that I see this agent supporting you in is in your OpEx, because most of us are trying to drive this number up and this number up. And what that requires is labor of some sort. However, by using an agent like this, what we can achieve is an increase in this number without a directly proportional increase in your OpEx, which would normally be your labor. Instead, the agent may help you with getting the same results without having to spend on agencies, team members, contractors, so that this number stay healthy where it is. So just going back to the plan, we have now finished up the impact on the business that this agent can make so that we have a good understanding of how we prioritize the utilization of it in our day-to-day operations. So let's move on to the second part of the plan, which is to walk through a demo of the input and output and talk a little bit about the day-to-day usage of the agent. So as a bit of a walkthrough, the input that we throw to the agent to catch from us is a URL of a landing page that you would like for it to dissect, understand the psychology, structure, and persuasion of, and then adapt it for your brand. In this case, it spat out 3 different versions for the brand Etsy. So over here, we have version 1, then we have version 2, and then we have version 3. And the number of versions of drafts that it sends you is completely modifiable very easily. And the idea here is to give you optionality for which version you want to choose to work on further. And if I hop back over to the whiteboard and we simplify things and say, here is the starting point of working on a new landing page, and here's the endpoint at 100% complete. The idea is that the agent can get you to about 80%. So getting you over here, and then you or your team can take it the rest of the way to 100%. For me, it's not really intended to take you from 0 to 100 without any input from you at all. To me, the value is in getting you over here faster, but also giving you ideas on how to position things and structure things and adapt examples that you find and reveal concepts and ways of persuading that you wouldn't have otherwise come across because of the biases that we all have in how we like to personally market. All right, so what I've done here is I have pulled up the landing page that I gave it. So you can see the URLs over here, they're matching. And this is actually the same landing page that I showed you earlier that Hollow is using in a large number of their ads. So let's do a comparison, a side-by-side, and compare what's on the landing page from Hollow and what the agent was able to output for us. And just for some context, Etsy is an awesome brand out of Canada, run by two great co-founders. They sell plastic-free, sustainable products and really passionate about it. We've done some work with them in the past and they're a pleasure to work with. So on the Hollow side, we have a header section with a headline, "Forget wool, alpaca socks." Forget wool, alpaca makes the best damn socks. And then we've got these three, I call them risk reversal / benefit icons over here on the right side on the agent analysis and then adaptation. We actually have one that I didn't mention, which is save up to 40%. The agent got that. Enjoy up to 30% in savings, doing Etsy's version of it, filling in a savings amount here. Headline here, forget plastic, Etsy makes the future better, which I can see why it would say that, because in the brand playbook that I gave to the agent, there is some mention of the future. All right, let's take a look at the icons. So icons, it caught 3 of them as well. So 90-day satisfaction guarantee, all right? Created for a cleaner planet and free delivery on all orders. So a nuance I wanna mention is that in the brand playbook, I don't remember this being inside there. So there may be some hallucinations, but for me, that's not the big problem, because that's not a big problem. And that's because the role of this agent in particular is not very deterministic. Like, I'm not trying to have it pull numbers from one place and put it in another and not make any mistakes at all. This agent is more of a creative support team member. And so I don't need it to be perfect, especially because I'm not expecting it to go from 0 to 100 for me. I want it to go from 0 to 70 or 80, and then I'll take it from 70 or 80 to 100. Okay, moving on. So on the Hollow side, there are 3 sections that they used. The agent, let's take a look. Agent also has 3 sections. So on the Hollow side, cool, dry, and comfortable all day long. Proudly made in the USA, love them or your money back. And also supporting body copy. And on the agent side, very, very similar, includes ideas for image creative that you can use on the landing page. And then a headline that is formatted very similarly in all caps, even matching the styles, which is pretty cool. And then body copy. So looks like it's nailing the mission that it's given, which is to model the example closely, which I'm happy about, because I would rather it model it pretty closely and then I come in and I make adaptations so that it's ours and not just a replica of the example that we gave it, instead of being really off base and nothing like the example that we gave it. And on a scale of 1 to 10, I think it's probably done a pretty good job of not copying it as a replica. It's really adapted copy to be relevant to the brand that I gave it a playbook for. So I'd rate its nuance to what I wanted it to achieve at a solid 8 out of 10. And that might be being harsh. All right, let's keep going down. So the next section is a middle section. That's how the agent defined it. So the middle section, Hollow, has socks for any season, temperature regulating. So it's got 3 bullets, and then it's got an image, and then what looks like it could be interpreted as a button, but really I think it's just a box of 10,000 5-star reviews. And then on the agent side, it modeled it very similarly. Easy green living for everyday lives. So it's got a headline, some bullets for body copy, and then modeling what I'd say is social proof here. So join 5,000 eco warriors. Right, moving along, the agent has defined this new section over here as the offer section. And it's interesting, you see Holo doing up to 40% off repeatedly, which I think is smart. So what did the agent do? Offer text, 30% off your first order. Image of reusable food wraps on display, which is one of the products that this brand sells. It's got a headline just like Holo does. It's got supporting body copy and then bullets. And it's even matched up the number of bullets as well. And the call to action of shop now. So far pretty good. As we keep going down, the agent has defined this section here as the testimonial section. So over here, quote, a team makes sustainability effortless. That's the equivalent of this one. I wish I tried them sooner. And then footer section, which is this over here, boxes with text, 90-day money back guarantee. So modeling the example, plastic-free living promise, and then fast and eco-friendly shipping. And it's done a pretty good job of even noticing the redundancies here. So Holo over here, they have these three, and then they repeat these three down here, and then shop now. So the agent was able to pick that up. So join the Etsy movement, and then it's got the three bullets again, saying it looks like in a different way or similar way. And then even got the legal portion. So I'd say it's done a pretty good job for this output. Just going through version 2, looks like it's very similar when it comes to structure, which is what I really care about a lot. And then version 3, similarly, it caught the structure in all the sections. So pretty good. And I say this because when it comes to the nuance of the copy and the language that it chose to use, that is stuff that I find through iterative refinements, you can upgrade the output quality of it. Because as you see it giving you copy, you can take note of sort of the directions that you don't like and the directions you do like, and you can work that into a reg system that it references or put it in the system prompts. So it has more direction. Very similarly to how you would with working with an agency or a team member or a contractor when you've got feedback for them. And that covers the input output. It's very simple, very minimalist as we like to do things around here. So you input a URL that you want to model, and then it outputs it for you. And you have two choices. You can take it from there and pull it out and throw it into something like Notion or Google Docs and work on it in there. Or on the other hand, you can chat with it to make refinements within Slack itself. So hopping back over here, we have now completed a demo as part of the plan, and we can move on to the build walkthrough. So you can review the architecture that we have over here and adapt it to your circumstances. For example, if you're not using Slack, you don't have to use Slack, you can swap something else in. So let's take a look at the architecture from a macro level. There are inputs as usual. So we use Slack. The agent over here has a few things. It's got a model that it's hooked up to that people like to call the brain. It has a context window functionality that allows it to remember the chats you've had with it through the window buffer memory function. And then it has access to two tools, which is what gives it the ability to act as an agent autonomously. So tool number 1 is the brand playbook, which is set up through Google Docs. And this is what allows it to grab business context specific information in order to have conversations with you about it. And then the second tool is where the magic happens, which is a secondary workflow that also contains an agent that does the breakdown, analysis, and writing of the copy and ideas for you. And so we'll take a look at the architecture of that in just a second. After we cover the last, which is the one that we've named Convert to Slack Friendly Text. And that's because the outputs from the workflow over here, as well as the agent over here, tends to come out in a format that isn't super easy to read inside of Slack. So we just added an OpenAI node that basically takes the output of this agent and formats it in a way that when it passes it over to Slack, it's formatted nicely and we can see all the components of the landing page very clearly. Okay, moving on, we can take a look at the workflow that gets called and does all the magic. So what happens is the agent up top will pass the URL to this workflow, to this HTTP request node, which calls a service called ScrapingBee, which simply takes a full page screenshot of the entire web page, the landing page, that gets passed over to this OpenAI node, which has the ability to analyze images. And what it outputs is the structure and the exact copy, and also descriptions of the images that it sees. It takes all of that and passes it over to this agent who has access, scroll up a bit, has access to the brand playbook and also a language model as a brain, so that it can take the input from the previous node that contains the structure and the description and the copy of the landing page and then adapt it for your business so that it's contextually aligned to helping you with building landing pages that can help with improving conversions on your funnel. And then this agent outputs the work that it's done back up to the main agent. And the main agent, again, passes it over to this node to make it Slack friendly text, and then goes over to Slack, which is how you get the 3 landing page drafts for review. So now that we've covered the macro, we can talk about the micro, which is the setup of each of these nodes. So we can start with the first one, which is the Slack trigger. So the Slack trigger is pretty simple. We have it trigger on a new message posted to the channel at this time. And then we have the channel to watch by ID, and we've just hard coded that to the channel ID. So that covers the input node. And then on the other side of that, on the output node, the setup is also pretty simple. So I'll call out some of the things worth mentioning, the nuances. So as far as resource, we have it on message. Operation is on send message to channel. And then again, we've hard coded the channel ID with the one we can pull from Slack. Message type, we have simple text message. And then as far as the message itself, because it's going to be dynamic, depending on what the agent outputs, because we might ask for different versions of the landing page, or we might throw in different landing pages over time as examples. The output's going to constantly change. So we use an expression for that. And all we do for that is we pull out this right here, we drag and drop that over here. And that's Slack. So Slack is covered. We've got the input and we've got the output. Now we can do some of the easy stuff. So we can do the brain, so the model. Pretty simple. All we've done is connected it to an OpenAI account and then chosen the model from the dropdown of GPT-4o. So that covers the model. And then when it comes to memory, again, pretty simple. We just use the JSON user expression. And as far as context window length goes, we have it at the default, which is 5, but you can shift this to another number if you like. For us, 5 is a good starting place, but very easy and simple to change as required. And again, I mentioned it earlier, but we are using window buffer memory, which is the default out of N8N. Okay, next up, we have the workflow that we're calling to do the analysis and writing. So this one is called the landing page analyzer writer. So how is it set up? We have the naming lined up so that the system prompt that the agent has also contains this name verbatim, and we will get into the system prompt for the agent that it's connected to in a second. And then we have a clear description to call this tool to analyze the landing page the user sends you. The input should be a URL of an image. And this is actually wrong because it should be the URL of a landing page. However, the AI is good enough to know that it just needs to grab a URL. And then the output should be a string from the tool. And the workflow is just the name of the workflow that we named it inside of N8N. And the convenient thing is that N8N has allowed us to define the expression using AI, just using its AI functionality. So this little sparkle here, we don't have to do anything. We just let it do its thing. Okay, moving on. The next one we have is the brand playbook tool, which contains brand specific information that you want the agents to have in order to refer to adapt the landing page structure and copy to your business and your products. So the way it's set up, pretty simple, through the Google Docs API, the Google Docs node that is inside of N8N. We have set the tool description manually, and we've set the description manually as well, and said, call this tool to review brand playbook. And that's relevant because in the system prompt that I'll be showing you in a second, we refer to this tool as the brand playbook tool. And how it's set up, resource is set as document, operation is set as get, and then the doc or URL, we use string that is in the link of the Google Doc that we want it to refer to. And so just for clarity, that string is a string that is over here. And the content that is inside of this Google Doc is something like this. Just do a little scroll, understanding the ideal customer, who are you really serving, crafting your brand messaging and positioning, advertising, storytelling, and visual identity. So this document would contain information that, in my perspective, would be something that you would want to hand off to someone like a copywriter or an ad creative specialist or a marketing strategist if they were new to your team, or if you were noticing that the work that they were doing was lacking consistency and alignment with how you want the brand to be running the marketing. But it also doubles as a great resource for agents as well, in addition to people. And the cool thing is in this system, if you make changes to the Google Doc, the agent will be pulling stuff in real time, so it'll get those updates too. So that covers the brand playbook. And now we can loop back around to the agent and look at the system prompt. So this is the zoomed out version of the prompt, and I'll zoom in to make it easier to read, but also to go through it. So structure-wise, we are starting with two things. First, we are starting with the role, and then we are getting into the task. And then over here, we have, just find a way to write this, boom. We have the tool description so that it knows what tools it has access to and when to call them. So tool number one was the landing page analyzer writer, and tool number two was the brand playbook tool. Some further instructions and nuances. If the user sends you a message that contains the URL of a landing page they would like written and analyzed, call the landing page analyzer writer tool. And that will probably cover 95% of use cases. In the next instruction, if the user would like to refine copy that you have outputted, call the brand playbook tool to familiarize yourself with the brand. And this prompt is actually not required anymore, this line here, because we have the node to simplify and format the output, which we'll get into in a second. And this last part was important because while testing, I noticed that sometimes this agent that gets the output from the workflow that it called would summarize the output it got instead of passing it back to the user as it came out. And as a result, instead of getting 3 drafts, it would only get 1. So this last line helps with addressing that. So when you receive outputs from the tool, you must, in bold, you must output the content as is to the user. Do not summarize or reformat the output in any way. That way we get the landing page drafts as the analyzer writer outputted for us. So that's the magic of the top level agent. And the last one, the node that it's passing to, in order for the message in Slack to look palatable to digest as humans, we have this as far as the setup goes. So we have the job description. Your job is to format the text below in a Slack friendly manner if the message is formatted in Markdown or has elements of Markdown. And then basically what this is an expression that allows us to input the output from the previous node, which is the agent. So it turns all of this text here into something that's a little bit more palatable. And then it's got some formatting rules so it can make things easier to read when it comes to headings, bolding, lists, links, and so forth. And that wraps up the top level flow. So the next one we can jump into is all the nodes for the workflow that the agent calls. So the first one is going to be this one, which is the when executed by another workflow. The setup on it is pretty simple. We have it set to define using fields below. And the way that we've set it up is the name is just set as URL and the type is string, because what it's grabbing is the URL from the agent that's passing through to this workflow. And just for clarity and context, the URL is a URL that we inputted for the landing page that we want to swipe and model. The next node is, this is done. The next node is the scraping bee node, which again, as a recap, helps us with taking a full paged screenshot so that the next node, the OpenAI one, can break it down and detail it out for the writing agent. So as far as scraping bee goes, pretty simple setup. You can copy exactly what's here. And the free credits you get from scraping bee is actually a lot. We haven't actually had to get the paid plan in order to use this so far. And of course, you can always swap this out for something else. It doesn't have to be scraping bee. It can be any other full page screenshot tool that you can access through API. So a common alternative could be Appify. But for the scraping bee setup, it's like this, pretty simple. We got this URL here for the API. We have send query parameters on. We set the name of the query parameter to API key. And then we have the API key here, which I've written out so we can keep using our credits. The value that we're passing through is the URL from the previous node. And you'll see here, this is the landing page that was inputted in the Slack from Hollow. And then over here, we've got screenshot full page with the value of true. And we have send headers on and the remaining setup that you can copy. Okay, so scraping bee is done. And now we can go on to the OpenAI node that analyzes the full page screenshot that comes through. And so I'll describe out the two nuances that we have over here and then look at the system prompt that we used. So the input type, as far as what it gets, we set it as a binary file because it's an image that it's getting from scraping bee. And then a nuance that I noticed us needing is the length of description to change the max tokens. I've set it here at 10,000. And that's because when it was at the default of, I think, 800 or so, it was stopping short of actually analyzing the image because there was too much information. And so being the max tokens that are here allows you to actually get all the information you need when breaking down the landing page and the structure and the copy to pass through to the writer agent. As far as the prompt goes, we've tried to keep it pretty minimalist. So we have the role and then the job up top. So you're a helpful, intelligent landing page analysis expert. You will be given a full page screenshot of a landing page. Your job is to describe exactly what you see in as much detail as possible including imagery, copy, headlines, subheadlines, bullets, sections, and subsections, which are all pretty standard components of most landing pages. The rest of our copywriting process depends on the accuracy of your description. You must describe the copy you see verbatim. Do not summarize copy. It is important for others on the team, aka the next node, to see the exact body copy, bullets, headlines, and subheadlines being used on the landing page. And again, this just came out because this was added because without it, I was finding that this node was summarizing things as opposed to passing things over to the writing agent verbatim. And the reason why we need it verbatim is so that the writing agent has all the context to what is making up the landing page. Okay, and then we have the last one, which is the AI agent node that the previous node is passing its output to. It has two tools similar to the one in the agent up top. So it has the brain, which we're using OpenAI, but you could swap it for Claude Sonnet 3.7 if you want, or any other model. And then it's also got access to the brand playbook, which we have already seen the setup of on the other nodes. So I'll just dive into the prompt that is inside of this agent, which is doing the writing. So again, we're starting off with role. You are a helpful, intelligent landing page copywriting expert. Your task is to model closely the example landing page inputted, contextual to our brand. So just giving it the job. You'll do this by carefully analyzing and reviewing the inputted landing page, analyzing both the copy and utilization of images. Then familiarizing yourself with our brand playbook using the brand playbook tool. Then you'll craft 3 different landing pages, each closely modeling the exact psychology, word choice, and structure of the example shared with you. Important, do not deviate from the example landing page shared with you. Your job is to model it closely. Let me just scroll up a little bit so you can see that. Because again, going back to what I said earlier, is I'd rather this agent over-index a bit on being closely modeling the example. And then when I take it back from the 80% line to the 100% completion, I can pull it back if needed, if it's a little bit too close to modeling. And what you may notice with the way this prompt has been created is that it models how a human might go about this process manually. So reviewing the structure and copy from another team member, referring to the brand playbook so that you're up to date on all things related to how we communicate, how we want to communicate, and then doing our drafts. So it's sort of a nice 1, 2, 3-step formula of analyzing the input, familiarizing yourself with the context, and then doing the work for the output. And that's the build. So coming back to the plan, we have now wrapped up on the build walkthrough, which means we are done. So if you like this agent and you like this kind of stuff about consumer, check out the link down below in the description. You'll find a link to our newsletter where every single day I send you insights similar to what was shared in this video. And also it's where you can get access to invites to our private program who we build agents like these for and give access to the exact workflows and provide support and guidance on contextualizing these agents to your business. See you in the next one.